improvising doesn't have to be that complicated. Hey everyone, David Ryshpan here again with you on YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about phrasing melodies and how phrasing melodies can lead to improvising. If this sounds familiar to you, if you've been following the channel for a while, I had a video called Level Up Your Improv by Learning Melodies. And I filmed that back in 2024. It was on the channel. And today I just went back to revisit it because I have been talking about this idea with my students over the past week. And when I went into my YouTube dashboard, the video was completely, entirely blocked by Sony Music because I used a tiny fragment of a Miles Davis recording. So we're going to redo it. We're going to redo it without any pre-existing copyrighted material. And hopefully this will be even better than the first take of this video. And hopefully it'll stay on the channel for a little bit longer. If you enjoy lesson videos like this, if you enjoy the videos I've been posting on the channel, please click all the little buttons below the video, like, subscribe, bell notification, all that stuff. It really helps the channel. It really helps deliver these videos to you via the algorithm, and it lets me know that this is the kind of stuff you are seeking out. All right, let's dive into the lesson. If you've been following the channel for a while, you might remember the Comping Concepts series that I will link to up there and in the description box below. And in the fifth part of the Comping Concepts series, the final part of the Comping Concepts series, I talk about how to get to improvising via your voicings. So I'm approaching it from a harmonic perspective. Today, I want to talk about it from a purely melody-driven perspective. Everything you need in order to improvise over a song is already in the song, in the tune that you are learning to improvise over. I feel like for students who are just getting into this music we call jazz and wanting to learn how to improvise in a straight ahead type of way, we are often confronted with a lot of extra harmonic information, a lot of extra melodic information, licks and phrases and riffs and all that stuff. And it's not really necessary. I feel like all the material we need is baked into the tune that we are learning, the tune that we are playing. For this example, I'm going to use Bye Bye Blackbird. In the video that got taken down, I used Miles Davis's 1956 classic version from the album Roundabout Midnight. If you don't know it, go look it up on your streaming platform of choice. I'm not going to use the audio in this video this time because I don't want this taken down again. But this work, this idea applies to any standard that is a quarter note based melody. This works more on quarter note based melodies, and it's a little bit less applicable to kind of eighth note driven bebop heads or 16th note driven Brazilian music, for example. This really works best with quarter note driven standards. So if you don't know the tune Bye Bye Blackbird, as it's written in its original form, is basically just an F major scale in quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes. I think we can all agree that this is not the most complicated or perhaps the most inspiring melody to play in that form, but great soloists and singers from Peggy Lee to Miles to Keith Jarrett have made this tune incredibly inspiring and enriching. And I think it's a great entry point into understanding how to phrase and how to improvise, because it is a great example of what I call a grid. And for me, I think when we're learning standards, when we're learning straight ahead jazz, improvising, it really helps to have a very solid grid. Like I've said before, if you know the melody without any embellishment, without any additional syncopation, and you know your 4-note rootless voicings, basically harmony built up to the 9th of every chord, you are well on your way to being able to improvise. And even if you don't know 5-note harmony all the way up to the 9th, you don't really need it. If you just learn the melody and start looking at all the possibilities that are in the melody, you can already begin to start improvising. So what's important to recognize here, compared to maybe classical music, is that the phrasing, the pushing and pulling of the melody happens in relationship to the constant time, the constant tempo. It happens in relationship to the melodic grid. And all the soloists I love, all the singers I love, have a certain symmetry or balance in the way that they phrase. For every phrase that they delay or anticipate or syncopate, they play another phrase that is very much as written or kind of closer to the grid. And there's always this balance, this push and pull, and everything equals out, right? Everything has to equal, you know, a 32 bar form or a 16 bar form or a 4 bar phrase. You can't kind of add a bar or take away a bar. Everything has to equal the grid, if that makes sense. So the way I taught myself to understand phrasing and the way I get my students to approach this is, for any standard that we're learning, I listen to, 4 or 5 versions, and I get my students to listen to 4 or 5 different versions. And you want to listen while looking at the lead sheet or even the first printed sheet music of the tune. And when you listen to the various versions, it's almost like you add layers of tracing paper, or if you're my age or older, like overhead acetates, transparencies, and you can compare and contrast what the written melody is, or the given unembellished melody, let's say, versus how soloist A phrases it, how soloist B phrases it, how soloist C phrases it. And you can start to see, are there phrases that everyone keeps the same? Are there phrases that are generally anticipated? Are there phrases that are generally delayed? And once you start to see the patterns, and you can literally see and hear the patterns if you're listening to the recording while you're reading the lead sheet, it will be very obvious if things are quarter notes or not quarter notes. And you start to see kind of the patterns and develop your taste of how you prefer to phrase things, whether you want to anticipate or delay back phrase and then rush the next, not rush, but condense the next phrase the way Louis Armstrong does. The most thrilling thing about Louis Armstrong's phrasing to me is that sometimes I don't know if he's going to make it. He waits so long and leaves so much space. Miles is the same way. They leave so much space and wait so long, and then they condense the phrase. So it all equals out. It's all balanced. And the thrill or the interest, especially in a melody that inherently is not quite so interesting, like Bye Bye Blackbird, the thrill is in, are they going to make it? How are they going to make up for all this time that they've waited? What are all the variations they can put on a melody that doesn't have a lot in it. That to me is the beauty and the thrill of this music. I separate my practice time into two kind of zones. I've talked about this in various practice videos on the channel, and this is absolutely vital for me, that we practice very systematic things to build our vocabulary or build our toolkit, but then we also have to practice performance and just practice playing. So you can start by being really systematic about how you practice your melodic paraphrasing. In this first example, I'm going to anticipate all of the note values in Bye Bye Blackbird that are longer than quarter notes. So all of the half notes, all of the whole notes, I'm going to anticipate them by at least an eighth note. In the next example, I'm going to delay all of the consecutive quarter notes. I'm going to turn them into eighth notes. And now in the next example, I'm going to add a couple of extra notes around the way I'm paraphrasing the melody. It's absolutely vital that you don't try to replicate your systematic practice when you're in performance mode. For me, they're two very separate things. I went to a masterclass with the pianist Jean-Michel Pilk, and he had a great encapsulation of this idea. Think of a boxer. A boxer does all kinds of workouts and all kinds of training that are not just literally boxing. And they are skills and workouts that build your strength and build your reflexes and build your muscle, but they're not what you use in the ring. And you can't consciously think about any of these things when you're in the ring facing your opponent. You just have to react to the situation that's in front of you, and you use all of the toolkit that you have built. You have used all of the strength training that you've built in service of responding to your opponent in the ring. The reason I have arrived at this idea of everything is built into the tune is because I think it often gets lost that if we're playing standards, standards are songs. We are playing over songs. And all the material is built into the song. And when you listen to the great soloists, it's a very melody-driven way of improvising. If you listen to Hank Mobley, if you listen to Ella, Miles, Louis Armstrong, Ben Webster, Lester Young, the list goes on and on and on. But all of the artists that I love from that common practice straight ahead era, it's all very melody driven, and the link between their phrasing and their melodic invention and the root of the tune, everything's rooted in the tune. It never sounds like a mode or a scale or a lick unless it's a quote. You know, someone like Dexter Gordon quotes other songs very often, but they're not thinking of, I'm going to play this scale over this chord. They're really thinking, if I can put myself in their shoes, I get the sense that they're really thinking, I am playing over this song. And as I've said before, song-based improvisation isn't just limited to what we call jazz music. If you think of R&B and pop music from the 70s until the 90s or early 2000s, there's always the ad-libs and the singer adding things over the final chorus. That's melody-driven improvisation. And I think as jazz musicians, we often forget or ignore that if we're playing standards, we're playing songs, and we kind of get so bogged down in all the information, all the great information that's available to us in terms of harmonic concepts or phrases and licks, either that we've transcribed or that we've found transcribed by other people. And I think we forget that improvisation at its core is just embellishment of a melody in the moment. That's really all it is. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. That's going to wrap it up for today's lesson. I hope that helps you in your pursuit of improvisation in kind of a straight ahead common practice language. Thank you so much for watching. My name's David Ryshpan. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.